Your earliest memory is probably fake, not exaggerated, not blurry round the edges. Fabricated, an event that did not happen to you. In 2018, researchers asked several thousand people to describe the first thing they could remember. Around 40% of them produced a memory from age 2 or younger. And based on everything we now understand about how human memory develops, most of those are impossible. They cannot be real. That's unsettling enough, but it isn't the interesting part. The interesting part is why the real ones are missing. Because the answer isn't that your infant brain was too undeveloped to record anything. Your brain recorded perfectly well. We've measured it, and I'll show you how. Something came along afterwards and erased it. And there is now good reason to think all of it is still in there. Here's the problem researchers had to solve first. How do you test the memory of somebody who can't talk? You can't ask a 5-month-old what they did last Tuesday. The solution came from a psychologist called Rovee-Collier, and it's almost absurdly simple. Lay an infant under a mobile. Tie a ribbon from the baby's ankle to it. Kick your leg. The mobile moves. Babies work this out within minutes. And then they kick deliberately, because it is comfortably the most interesting thing that has ever happened to them. Then you send them home, and days later you bring them back, ribbon on the ankle, but disconnected. If they remember the rule, they'll kick. They kick. A 3-month-old holds onto it for a couple of days. A 6-month-old, closer to 2 weeks. And the older the infant, the longer it survives. So the recording machinery works. It works from the first weeks of life. But look at that pattern, because the pattern is the clue. Those memories aren't absent. They're decaying on a schedule. And the schedule runs faster the younger you are. Something is actively removing them. Here's what most people don't realize. You didn't lose those years because your brain was too weak to hold them. You lost them because it was growing too fast to keep them. The hippocampus is the structure that binds an experience into something you can retrieve later. And it manufactures brand new neurons throughout your entire life. But in infancy, it does it at a rate it will never come close to again. Now, a new neuron doesn't politely locate an empty space and settle down. It wires itself into circuits that are already carrying information. Every single arrival rewrites connections that an existing memory was depending on. Think of a library where the shelving gets torn out and rebuilt every night. The books are real. But the catalog has been reorganized so many times that no path leads to any particular one anymore. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because in 2014, a team led by Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn tested this in both directions. First, they suppressed neurogenesis in infant mice, slowed the building work down, and the memories stayed. Memories that should have vanished didn't. Then they went the other way. They boosted neurogenesis in adult mice. And the adults started forgetting like infants. They induced infantile amnesia in a fully grown animal, deliberately, by making its brain grow faster. So the forgetting isn't a malfunction, it's the cost of construction. Okay? Second question, and this one is stranger. When exactly did you become someone? Because a memory of your own life needs a you for it to have happened to, and that arrives surprisingly late. Put a baby in front of a mirror with a small mark on their forehead. Before roughly 18 months, they don't reach for their own face. They see a baby. They don't see themselves. The self shows up late. And almost exactly where the self shows up, around 2.5, is where memories start sticking. Then language arrives, and language changes everything. Because a memory you can put into words is a memory you can rehearse. And rehearsal is what keeps a file alive, which leads to the single strangest fact in this whole subject. The boundary isn't fixed. It moves. And culture moves it. Researchers in New Zealand compared earliest memories across cultural groups, and found that Maori adults reported first memories from substantially earlier than their European counterparts, closer to 2.5 years than 3.5. That's not a genetic difference, it's a storytelling one. A tradition of narrating detailed family and personal history to children early and constantly, which means how far back into your own infancy you can reach depends partly on how the people around you talk to you about it. Now you might be thinking, fine, but I can genuinely see mine. It's right there. Right. So let's go back to that 40%. Those people weren't lying. Their brains had done exactly what brains do. You were told a story about yourself, repeatedly. You saw the photographs, and your brain filled in the visual detail and filed the result under experience, which means your earliest memory may not be a memory of an event at all. It may be a memory of being told about one. And, here's the genuinely uncomfortable follow-on. There's no internal difference between the two. It doesn't feel borrowed. A reconstructed memory arrives with exactly the same weight and certainty as a real one, which means you cannot tell from the inside which of yours is which. But here's the thing, the original traces may never have gone anywhere. In mice, researchers have used optogenetics, light-activated tagging of specific neurons, to mark the exact cells that fire during an early experience. Then they wait until the animal shows every sign of having completely forgotten it, and they switch those same cells back on with a pulse of light. The mouse behaves as though it remembers. The memory was there the entire time. What was missing wasn't the file, it was the route to the file. Neuroscientists call these silent engrams, present, intact, unreachable. Which brings us back to the man who named this problem in the first place. In 1905, Sigmund Freud coined the term infantile amnesia, and he decided the memories were being deliberately buried, hidden, because their content was unacceptable to the adult mind. He was wrong about that. Repression doesn't explain it, and it certainly doesn't explain why the boundary falls in almost the same place for everyone, everywhere, more or less regardless of what actually happened to them. But about the architecture? About the idea that your first years are still physically inside your head, sitting in cells you have no way to address? 120 years later, he's looking accidentally, partially right. And there's one properly practical thing buried in all of this. Go back to that New Zealand finding, because it isn't a curiosity, it's a lever, and it works on any child. How adults talk to a child about the child's own past measurably changes how far back that child will eventually be able to reach, not quizzing them, elaborating with them. Do you remember when we went to the beach and the dog took your hat? Adding detail, inviting them to add detail, turning the event into a story instead of a fact. Children raised that way produce earlier and richer first memories and keep them for the rest of their lives. You cannot hand a child memories of being an infant, but you can move their border. You can give somebody a reach further back than your own. Here's what I keep coming back to. We treat those years as a loss. 3 years of experience, deleted, but almost nothing about them was actually lost. Everything that mattered stayed. You didn't keep the afternoons in which you learned your language. You kept the language. You don't remember the 1,000 separate times somebody came back when you cried, but you kept whatever you now believe about whether people come back. You have no scene of learning to walk, you just walk. That period didn't get stored as memory. It got stored as you, which is why you can't retrieve it. You're not looking at a gap in the record. You're looking at the thing that's doing the looking.